You're listening to the Yes, I'm Still Sober podcast with John Rabin. Hello, it's the Yes, I'm Still Sober podcast, and I'm John Rabin. It's episode 53, you guys. Thanks for joining me. Episode 53 means it's the first episode of year 2 of the Yes, I'm Still Sober podcast. And I had thought about, because people do different things, I've noticed with the numbering or labeling of their podcast episodes. I've seen people do seasons, like this is season 17 of the podcast, and that's cute. But no, I had actually thought, well, maybe I could do like year 2, episode 1 or something. But like a lot of ideas or clever spins of things, I typically dwell on it for a second and then go, nah, because it's just kind of like, really, just call it episode 53, fucker. Like, that's really just, it's like, why? Are you trying to spin it a certain way? Do you think it'll appeal to people differently because of a number of your goddamn podcast episode? What do you want to do, John? I just want to call it 53. We'll call it 53. Quit overthinking everything. Jesus Christ, you and your brain. But, so, yeah, it's episode 53. So it's nice to see you guys, hear you guys. Nice for you to hear me. Semantics. I'm paranoid about it, so it really doesn't matter. But if there actually is one of you out there who is bothered by the slight change in background noise because I'm using a tiny fan as opposed to nothing being on, stillsoberpod@gmail.com. You can email me or message me on the Facebook page of the podcast and let me know, yeah, it is kind of distracting. And I'll go, okay. And then maybe I'll change it for you, or I'll judge you as being petty. I don't know, but I'm actually more curious to see if it's just my own paranoia, because I can hear it. But it's not like I've got a huge box fan that's just sitting there going, distracting everybody from what I'm saying. I'm like, let me talk to you about something serious, and you're just hearing, it's not that. I am definitely. I think it's more of a paranoia, and you're probably noticing it now because I said something. If I hadn't fucking said anything, it'd be fine. But once again, I've called attention to something and ruined a good thing. I tell you. Anyway, so yeah, so that's where I'm at, in a better headspace than last week, I guess. And so I thought we would get to it as soon as I adjust a thing. All right, that thing has been adjusted. I'm joined, as always, by my silent co-host, Sid the cat, who is currently cleaning herself and jingling about. So if you hear a little jingling in the background, as always, that is my cat not giving a shit. So, being the first episode of the new year, I wanted to focus on addiction and recovery for this episode a little bit more, because typically my episodes are just what's going on with John this week and my mindset and dealing with different shit, and hoping that you guys that it does something for you. But I read an article on BBC News about there's a podcast called Dopey, and it's it's a really big podcast, and it's basically was started by a couple of guys who had met. I believe they met in rehab, but they basically started a podcast because they noticed, like I have, that typically when people talk about recovery and addiction, it falls into one. It goes one way or the other. It's typically really, really like sappy, over the top, just every day's a treasure kind of shit, and then or it's the other way where it's just talking about really dark, life-destroying shit that just brings everybody down, like to make an emotional impact kind of thing. And there's places for both, and it's a nice balance. It's a nice format when somebody's sharing a story. The typical format when someone's sharing their story, like say in a meeting or giving a talk of some kind. It's basically, it's like, here's what's going on with my life. I started off this way. I had so much potential. Look how talented I was. Blah, blah, blah. I could throw a football well or whatever. Like I knew how to dance. And then shit goes awry. And they talk about some of the crazy shit that they did, and like this experimenting with whatever, and all of a sudden things, and you see this in movies too, where it's like, oh, things are going great, and because of the success and everything, he started experimenting with drugs, and then just downward spiral. And people who are not experiencing addiction issues, this is the entertaining part, just because watching somebody self-destruct is fucking entertaining. It just is, especially if you don't know them. Like if you know them, it's kind of fucked up, but if you don't know them, it's like, wow, this is kind of entertaining. It's like the movie Trainspotting or something. Like you're watching it just crash and burn, and then then they reach a point, and then they start getting help, and then it's the schmaltzy stuff at the end. It's just, oh man, I'm getting a second chance. Yeah. And that's fine, but a lot of us like dark humor. Feel like there's a spot in between that it just doesn't, that a lot of people don't cover, that it's just kind of, I like to make fun of stuff. The reality of the situation is life is great as opposed to death. But it's not, super happy, every moment is a gift type of a thing. Like the reality is life has great moments, but it is a struggle, and let's be sarcastic about it and make some jokes, but know that we take it seriously, because it's better than being dead. Like, I don't know, there's just this thing, and that Dopey podcast, that those guys wanted a place where they could share stories and then and talk about it and all this stuff. And it's they go into detail about different stories. They're different episodes. It wasn't. I've listened to some, but it's not as much for me. But I really appreciate where they came from, and I did not know that, because they started in 2016, and I didn't know that last year one of them relapsed and OD'd. And and I was reading that article, and I went, fuck, I didn't know that, because it was just like that had happened like last summer. And I had listened to several episodes like just prior to that. So I listened to them on and off for the 2 years, and I didn't realize that was what had happened. So it was kind of a reminder to me once again that it can happen to anybody. And then also just it made me think about the fact that maybe I needed to talk about it again some more, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. There was a specific thing I wanted to talk about today, and it has to do with calling addiction a disease. By the way, not that I'm putting down people who are uber positive about their recovery and sugary and yay kind of shit. That's just not where I fall. And since people are not all the same, that's kind of why I talk about this stuff here, and why I hope some people who listen to this keep coming back, because I don't do that, and I don't think that it's unhealthy to be you, and if that's who you are, that's cool. I just don't I don't like, it doesn't feel, it's not my experience. So anyway, but is addiction a disease? Sure, why not? That's my answer. Sure. Because I used to struggle with that. When I was in rehab for heroin, I used to fight that. Like I started fighting it when I went to NA, Narcotics Anonymous, for before I ultimately ended up going to rehab. So like I started fighting it because it always used to bug me, and I still believe, I believe this wholeheartedly, which is that words mean things. I don't like it when terms are thrown around, when people use words that cover a broad sense. Like semantics kind of a thing, because I feel like you need to use your words. So words mean things. I like to say that a lot, and you will hear me say that on a regular basis when I'm bitching about things and I'm bitching about people. So I had always been like, no, I think addiction's more of a brain disorder, much like Tourette's or something like that, like something with your brain, or like people who or just because you're wired differently, like people who suffered depression more than others. Like it's a thing. It's definitely separates you from normal people. That you've got people say an addictive personality, but I think the addiction, I think it's definitely in your brain, and I think you're wired differently. But that was so my whole thing was arguing against the term disease. But if you look at the context of where that came from, the idea was the similarities that people when they started calling it a disease, 80 years ago? So old AA 12-step is, something like that. It makes sense because of the stigma and because people didn't understand it. There's still people who don't understand it. But with opioid crisis, as the media is calling it, and everything else, it feels like people are becoming more and more informed. I think it's less of an issue now. I think there are way less people that go, why can't he just stop with the heroin? Like, I think that people are finally kind of pulled their head out of their ass about people who self-destruct on booze or whatever. And it's like, man, I'm fine when I drink 17 margaritas. Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping. It certainly seems to me, as a society, we've kind of wised up a lot. Definitely a lot over 80 to 100 years. So, but at the time, I totally see why they did it. It's to break the stigma of alcoholism that they figured that started calling it a disease because of the similarities and you know, the thing about it. The problem is that for some people, calling it a disease has a negative effect. It's like if, you know, once somebody identifies that they have a problem, they're like, I have a disease. I'm like, this is who I am. You know, there's nothing I can do about it, is the mentality. You know, it's out of my hands. This is the disease I live with. You know, this is nothing that I can do. And I think that not just with addiction, I think with a lot of things. I think when people, you know, they suffer with certain mental issues, and then it's like if you know, because it's easier to just go, this is who I'm going to be, and like know that there's no cure for it, that you're just, the mindset is like, well, I can't, you know, there's nothing that I can do about this. So that's too bad. Like, this is what I'm going to do. Well, so that's the thing. That's so, but I like to go, but that's my answer is yeah, sure, fine. Because it doesn't matter. Ultimately. That was my biggest problem, was trying to define it when it didn't matter what I called it. Is it a disease? Is it a disorder? Is it a minor tic? Let's get down and really debate and decide what it is that's going to kill us. Like if you're dead, you're dead. It doesn't matter what you called it. Like, oh no, that disorder killed him. Like, it doesn't matter. You're focusing on the wrong bullshit. It's crazy how long it took me to finally go, fine. Because that's kind of what I did in rehab. I finally just kind of went, you know what, fine. I'm going to call it a disorder, but does it matter? Let's figure out why the fuck I don't care about living. Let's figure out why I don't care to change. And I've just been you know, going back to the default setting of let's scramble and get drugs. Like, it's just, it's weird how you can do that. How you can be focused on the details. It's a lot like what I see. You know, this is not just addiction related. I see people do this all the time. Because it's easier to focus on terminology. It's easier to change labels and the names of things. And, you know, when there's a problem with, you know, prejudice or anything else, or, you know, oppression and different kinds of levels for different groups. So you're coming up with different terminology, you know, using different buzzwords, instead of looking for solutions for the actual issue, because it's easier to focus on let's relabel stuff. Let's go from, you know, let's call it like the George Carlin bit, the shell shock to, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, let's relabel things instead of fixing the fucking problem, because it's easier. It's easier to, instead of, you know, because the problem solving part is difficult, because every issue is complicated. It really is complicated, but it's easier to relabel stuff and work on, you know, change words. So that was the deal. So that's why to me it's like, that's why I just kind of go, sure, why not? Yeah, it's a disease. Let's go with that. Now, can we get to the problem at hand? How do you fucking fix yourself? How do you get through it? That seems slightly more important than the label. Labels. Man, I read this. I was searching online, just different stuff over the past couple weeks, and I came across this post. I don't know what her name is. It's interesting. It's like a different view how this person, how she quit drinking after having issues. But she had this post that is very, I don't know, it's very clickbaity. Of course, this is from 5 years ago, back at the height of blogs and fancy branding for the blogs. But what the blog was, the entry was called 9 Reasons I'm Not an Alcoholic, with an asterisk right next to alcoholic, and then it says, no one is. And it has to do with labels and the fact that it's just about, it's not that it's incurable, that once you stop drinking for good, you're cured. You know, it's the label that is a stigma and can put a block in front of you trying to live your life and stuff like that. Like, it was an interesting perspective, but it was also kind of bullshit. No, I mean, it's bullshit to me. It's not bullshit. I think that's the whole deal. Is I think that if you have to figure out your perspective, what's going to work for you to help you. And I could see her point for different things. But the thing is that her website is called hipsobriety.com, and I fucking hurt myself rolling my eyes. Like, to the point that this year she just rebranded from Hip Sobriety to Tempest Sobriety School, and I can't stop rolling my eyes. I'm like, Jesus Christ, with your branding. I mean, I'm sure she's trying to help people, but it's just, just talking about how, you know, the manifesto, like, it's stuff like this. You don't need to hit rock bottom. Am I an alcoholic is the wrong question. You know, it's like everything you want starts here. Sober is the new black. More and more of us are waking up to the reality that drinking is not sexy or sophisticated or adult. It is the exact opposite of those things. Drinking makes us look like shit, kills our self-confidence, sucks our time, money, and energy, ruins our health, works against every single goal we have for ourselves, and keeps us stuck and stunted. I disagree. I actually think that drinking and doing drugs can be sexy and fucking cool. It can be. That's why we do it. That's why we did it. Because life is fucking boring. Sometimes. So the idea of going, you know what? It's not cool. All right. Okay. That's good, though. No, it's good because that's how she's able to go forward, is when you convince yourself it's not cool. That's why I'm sober now, is because I had to ultimately convince myself that being a drunk in a bar in my 40s around people who are 22 was not cool. It'd be a lot cooler to be that guy that used to self-destruct all that time and somehow pulled his ass out of the fire, didn't go off the edge, and is doing something now that was cool. But did I enjoy it for a big chunk of that time until it just was not able to. So I mean, I get that, but it's just sober is the new black. But if that's more along the lines of your feeling, hipsobriety.com. Boy, what a great promotion I'm doing for this person. It's not a sad consequence. It's a proud choice. Sure. You need a holistic approach. You don't, unless you're into that shit. Your only label is your name. There are hundreds of reasons to reject the labels alcoholic and addict. There's not 100 reasons. There's basically one. There's one reason to reject that label. It's if it fucks with you and it hinders your willingness to change. That's really it. That's the only reason to fight labels, because otherwise, like I mentioned earlier, it's just if you are focused on a label, words mean things. I'll say it again. Another one of her things is like it's not incurable. But the idea of incurable comes from a notion that cured means we can drink normally. Bullshit. No, it's not bullshit. I've seen people do it. Because later down in that same paragraph, we can rewire our brain with meditation and chanting and yoga and food and CBT and Kundalini. All right. Man. This website is frustrating. And I bet it helps. I bet it's helped a lot of white women. But there's a lot of white women in Brooklyn that love this shit. And here. But god damn. All right. Sorry. I got distracted. Because the whole point I was bringing up, I was like, that reminded me, because I don't like, when it comes to labeling, like, I don't like recovery. I don't like the term recovery. Like, I'm in recovery. Am I? I feel recovered. I mean, I've still got things that fuck with me on a weekly basis, but I'm in a pretty good spot. But you know what? That's the whole deal. Other people can say I'm in recovery because that's why I relabel stuff all the time. I do it in my stand-up act. I say that I'm a retired alcoholic. I say that I'm a retired junkie. I say that because I still like drugs and booze. That I think that I get it. That I'm not denying why people do it, and I get it. That's why I did it. It's weird to say that, to not admit there was a reason you did it. You didn't do it because you were immature, and that maturity is like, well, my mature side doesn't allow me to drink. Get the fuck out of here, man. That's not. You did that because that's who you were at the time, and don't regret things. Don't regret decisions. Just, become the new. It's a mindset now. I don't know. It just made me. Seriously, man, white women. What the fuck? Oh, all right. Let's get back on track. Didn't I have a point? I had a point. All right. Here's my fucking point, dude. My point. I did have one last point, and then we're gonna say that's it for this week. But the one thing that you need to know is that whether you're labels or anything else, just realize this shit's on you. It's on you to change. That's the whole reason. The whole reason that 12-step and AA, that you have to admit that you're powerless, is because in your current state, you are powerless to fucking change it. Because you need help. And you need to, and that's the thing. You get help so that you can change your mindset. And it takes time. That's why good rehabs are 90 days, because it takes a long time to change that mindset, so that you can work on a spot where your willpower is actually worth a goddamn, and that you can actually, and that you've got new. This is in general. This just isn't even with abusing drugs or booze. It's like with anything that's keeping you from being productive or for achieving goals or living life, is you have to change thought patterns and work on yourself and get to a point so that your willpower can allow you to continue the new habits that you're forming and change your life. And that's why focusing too much on labels is a distraction. It's, you can call it whatever. And I like changing stuff, but I get why that person does this. I get the whole idea why. It's the same reason I do what I do. It's because if you change a label to make yourself feel better, if it ultimately works, that allows you to go, yeah, now I'm into it. Cool. But then don't do a declaration to go, you know what? There is no alcoholism. It's not a disease. What the fuck ever, man. It doesn't matter. Call it what you will and get yourself some fucking help. Start working on yourself before you're dead, and it doesn't matter. Your label's not going to matter when you're dead. That's really what it comes down to. So, yeah. And that's my message for today. Fuck labels. But, yeah. All right. Well, that was, damn. Hell of a long episode for me. But thank you guys for sticking around. We'll see you next week. This has been Yes, I'm Still Sober, Year 2, a.k.a. Episode 53. I'm John Raven. Later.